TYT would like to thank Squarespace for making possible our coverage of the 2017 Oslo Freedom Forum. Whether you need a website, a domain, or an online store, make your next move with Squarespace. You can start your free trial at squarespace.com/TYT, and you'll get 10% off your first purchase.
We would be remiss if we didn't talk about, it's now the second day that Manchester is dealing with the aftermath of the attack on the Ariana Grande concert yesterday, where 22 people were killed. They're only just releasing the names, and they've confirmed some of the names, they've confirmed about 12 of the names. But Theresa May, Prime Minister, declared that the threat level has now been raised from severe to critical, meaning authorities believe a further attack is imminent. And they've suspended, because they're in the middle of an election campaign there at the moment, so they suspended campaigning, but apparently at the end of today, Jeremy Corbyn's just come out and said, no, we're not going to allow terrorism to derail our democratic process, which is a legitimate point. Yeah. But almost 1,000 troops will be deployed to British streets after the threat level was raised. About 984 troops will be stationed from Wednesday, replacing police guards at number 10 Downing Street, Parliament and Buckingham Palace, and elsewhere around London. And I live in London, and that since 7/7, the 7/7 bombings and 9/11, you see it more and more. You see, and it was really unusual. It was a shock to the system to see. Before, the policemen, they didn't carry guns. Yeah. They had bats. But now in London, it's actually more rare that I see a policeman without a gun. Yeah. Which is completely changed in the last 10 years, 10, 15 years. And you know, this is the world that we live in.
And it sort of gets to the idea of, are we going to allow them to change our way of life?
Well, unfortunately,
in some ways we focus on these big picture ways that life changes, but there's also subtle things like the arming of the police, and in America that was already a problem, and it only has become worse, especially as a result of the military equipment coming back from our overseas wars.
Right, and I mean, it's not subtle. It's very palpable in the way they've beefed up GCHQ, which does a huge chunk of the world's, the Western world's spine. So yeah, and I mean, the other thing is, Manchester is, what are you doing attacking Manchester? Manchester is awesome. And I say that because you're not going to get a hysterical reaction where everybody's going to start attacking mosques and there's going to be some, that's not the spirit of Manchester. It's before even the migration crisis, it's been an incredible melting pot for years because it's an old industrial center. And it's been there was a huge Syrian community there for years and years and years since the last century. Yeah. It's a real kind of mixed city. And I think that the way that it's being reported at the moment, so there's been multiple articles about how there's been 6 arrests of men, or 16 arrests of men in a 5-mile radius of where this, I'm not going to say the bomber's name from yesterday because it's pointless, he's whatever. And I think people are trying to kind of figure out if it's like a Paris situation where there's particular kind of ghettos and centers of terrorism. But a 5-mile radius from the south of Manchester, I was speaking to a former reporter for the Manchester Evening News, and she was saying that encompasses like basically half of the city.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, and so
LA is a gigantic city, and a 5-mile radius is,
I just think there's this
millions upon millions of people.
Exactly. I just think there's this like rush to try and figure out like, okay, how do we like lock them in and like exterminate them or something? And also the mosque that his family and he were known for going to is known as like a moderate mosque. They hold non-denominational like cohesiveness evenings where they allow non-Muslims in. And apparently somebody from the mosque, this was in a Sky News report, somebody from the mosque had said that last year there was a strong anti-ISIS sermon at Friday prayers, and after that the bomber apparently did not like that and stopped coming to that mosque as often. I mean, there has been some backlash in the greater Manchester area in Oldham. A group of people firebombed a mosque, but Oldham is like, I guess I would call it like, it's a place that has historical racial tensions, and there are people there waiting for something like this to happen. Yeah. And this is the kind of, and then if they're firebombed a mosque, congratulations. I mean, you really fixed the situation. And certainly we've had that experience
in America too.
It's so, okay, you're geniuses. All right. But yeah, so.
Let's show them how random, senseless violence isn't the solution by firebombing a place of worship that they are not able to go to since they're dead already.
Right, and so I think generally on message boards of these kind of jihadist sites, you'll see either the explanation or excuse for it being, well, now our women and children in Syria or Yemen or wherever are experiencing this exact same terror, so now you know, or it's going to trigger global jihad. No, it's not. And if you know Manchester at all, it's like they're hard people. Like this is where like Mancunians are notoriously tough. And actually there was a like immediately multiple faith leaders and a local poet called Tony Walsh. This video has gone viral. He came out and recited a poem at a huge kind of rally in solidarity and support and cohesiveness in Manchester that's about Manchester, and we'll have a watch of that.
This is the place where we stand strong together with a smile on our face, Mancunians forever, because this is the place in our hearts, in our homes, because this is the place that's a part of our bones, because Manchester gives us such strength from the fact that this is the place. We should give something back. Always remember, never forget. Forever Manchester. Choose love, Manchester. Thank you.
Right, I mean, I love Manchester. I've only been there once. I went there last year. One of my best friends is from Manchester, and I finally like went up and visited her. And here's a tenor of like it's a fun city. It's about music, and it's got a great nightlife, and it's kind of England's second city in a lot of ways. But yeah, I passed a nightclub that had a sign on it that said "No statement jewelry that can be used as a weapon." Like it gets rowdy there, but I love it, like in a fun way. Like please don't like cut a bitch with your statement necklace. Like that's the kind of place that it is. But yeah,
or ensnare someone in your hoops.
Yeah, it could happen.
Yeah.
Don't even joke.
Yours look dangerous.
No, they're for defense. Yeah, and I've kind of looked at U.S. press reaction to what's the point? It's so predictable to the attacks. And
I would prefer to look at that than U.S. Twitter reaction to the attacks. I mean, like people in the U.S. right wing are using this as an opportunity to criticize Ariana Grande.
Yeah.
Or they got the pulse of the international. Yeah, it's just ridiculous. And then of course people, I mean, there's American right wingers and right wingers in other countries who they never have a better day than when a terror attack like this happens, because they believe it justifies everything they believe. They react with glee when these sorts of attacks happen.
And I'm not saying having a knee-jerk response like there aren't. The thing is, nobody really knows about how many numbers of Muslims in the world hold so-called radical views. And then of those numbers, who's going to do anything? And then, so are people allowed to even hold radical views? Apparently not. Apparently we have to like seethe with hatred if somebody hates us. It's people don't know what they're talking about.
Well,
that's the unfortunate thing.
If that's your belief that we need to try to root that out, then how do you do that?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's technological mass surveillance measures. There's citizens spying on each other. Neither of those are areas that we'd like to go down, or at least that I think a lot of us would like our government or our society to go down.
It's like you're taking the bait. It's
yeah,
like
exactly.
Taking the bait.
And both of those are objectively changing our society to be much more like the societies that these killers idolize.
But it's really important for that kind of right-wing section of society that we really show that we hate them. Like, okay. And then what? And then what happens?
Yeah, no, like Jenk said in our initial coverage of
it.
Yeah, like Jenk said in our initial video, we were told for a long time, if you simply call it what it is, radical Islamic terrorism, then I'll root it right out.
Yeah, it is that. Okay.
It didn't seem to work. Maybe it takes 5 months.
Well, let me call Manchester real quick, just see if it's like fixed now.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, obviously huge tragedy. I mean, the families of more than 20 people killed, of I believe over 100 at this point injured. I mean, absolutely devastated. The community devastated for the rest of their lives. Ariana Grande individually devastated and she probably feels in some way responsible, which of course she isn't. But that's how humans work.
I mean, it's
she'll
not even
feel terrible for the rest of her life.
It's not even about her. It's about
the
that's
yet another person on the line.
And it was just specifically that it was okay. You bombed a bunch of teenage girls and little girls. There was the story of the 8-year-old, and one of the headlines, and I think it was the Telegraph, was this wasn't even her mother. This was somebody trying to help her. I grabbed her. I tried to grab her. Her little arms were broken.
Yeah.
And what are you doing? Like, okay, the person who convinced, okay, let's leave the bomber aside. I don't know what his psychology was. The person who's convincing somebody to go back and helping them make a bomb for this occasion, and these are like career jihadists who spend their lives doing this. Not all of them can be completely out of their minds, and you know you're making an active choice every time they work on one of these operations. And just what are you doing? Is that really helping Syrian, Libya? Is it really helping any of the women and children that you supposedly get so enraged about protecting from evil West? No, you're killing little 8-year-old girls. Congratulations.
And as you said before, those women and children would of course not be party to this.